of people and behaviours, of physical spaces and cities, and of course of enabling technologies, which is, I think, the key win, as you've heard from Steve. And we've come a long way, you know, as a species, up to this kind of point where we're hunched over a piece of wood at a computer. But I think that kind of next trajectory is quite interesting. And I want to kind of take you on a very quick journey through, I think, 6 colliding forces here that we think are reshaping how and where work takes place. The first, of course, is what is work about? I mean, is it about bringing people into a container at the same time each morning and supervising them and watching them work? And when you look at the containers we provide, and this is about an £80 a square foot office in the city, are they great spaces for great people to be creative? Is it about being present and supervised in the future? Is it about being squashed into increasingly expensive real estate? And as you've heard, you know, being tethered down by the technology that we've had in the past, and Steve's favourite, surrounded by paper. Well, we're not sure. Perhaps it's time to challenge that. And I think certainly what we're seeing is that demographics will be the way this is challenged. I mean, for the first time, we have 4 generations in the workplace. That's never happened before. The baby boomers are leading companies, but the traditionalists are still there. They haven't yet retired at the same time as the millennials have come through. And you can see the tensions. I mean, it's all over the media, the young, the old, male, female, the generations at the board table. And I think that next generation will have the biggest impact on how and where we work. And Murdoch, who owns MySpace, you know, calls himself a digital immigrant, but he calls his daughters digital natives. And I guess that the challenge for this conference today is to understand what digital natives will want out of their work and workplace going forward. Not just the kind of the teenagers who are the consumers of new media, but those that have kind of yet to come out of the classroom. And this is a Building Schools for the Future, it's an academy in the UK, massive investment in this country to teach our children in different ways. My gut feeling is they'll come into a workplace today that's not suited to the way they've learned. And certainly the next generation, the Googlers of tomorrow, what will they want when they emerge? Will they still commute in as one of those 27 million journeys at 9 in the morning? Now, you heard a lot about technology from Steve's comments, and this is changing rapidly. I mean, Steve and I have discussed the idea of the death of distance as being a primary trigger to changing the premise of where work takes place. And Nicholas Zenstrom, who was on stage at one of our events a few years ago, when Europe's press thought he was a complete idiot from Tallinn, has revolutionized the idea that voice is free across the globe. What's coming next? Well, we're well aware of some of the trends, but if you look at people who are tweeting, who here has tweeted today? Have a quick show of hands. 1, 2, 3. We have a few tweeters, that's great. But what we're seeing now is that we're now going to kind of, what Google calls the mashup. We're going to juxtapose people and places with the city for the first time. Augmented reality means that from your phone you have a third eye, which is your kind of remote control in the future for the city. And I think this changes everything when you have the ability to know where people are and what they're doing, but also who's connecting to who. That's a Twitter network in the city in real time. Now, transpose this to an organisation, and you can begin to see people with their email flows. Here, Warren, Charles, and Craig with a huge email flow. Now, A, why would you put them on separate floors in the same building? But the question you have to then ask is, should they be in the same building at all? So Shell, who have about 115,000 people around the world, Andy Boyd, who's their global head of knowledge management, has been experimenting with the idea of how you get networks inside an organisation. And he challenged me. He said that what we found is when you use web discussion forums within Shell, the people that answer questions are unknown to the person asking the question inside the Shell global community. And of all the answers you get back, the 70% most useful came from the half of the people you didn't know. So as a global knowledge manager, he says you've got the wrong people in the building with you to solve problems. The people you do bring into the building together for a global business are not the right people to work with, given the fact that we are now networked on a global basis. So the way that web is heading, which is now being called Fuse, it's find, use, but then share and expand, we think will change work, and that has a big impact about where we locate and how we connect to work together. And as I think you'll hear more and more about, certainly this afternoon, you know, somewhere like Korea, we're seeing massive change in the city. And the idea that we had many years ago from Buckminster Fuller about this kind of dome of wireless connectivity is soon to be here. Rapidly extending technology will let you connect from your pocket at the blistering speed that you experience from home. And therefore, the entire city becomes a place of work. And this is some modeling from MIT, Carlo Ratti's lab in Boston, to show how populations move around a city based on cell phone coverage and density. And you can begin to watch movement based on time of day and various activities, from lunch to a football match. And then you can begin to say, well, the city is now a distributed hub. It's about working on the pause. It's not about home working or just being in the office. Where should work take place? And I think increasingly it'll be in a very, very varied range of destinations, from private clubs, we heard about Soho House, to paid-for environments like Regis, to perhaps public buildings like the British Library, where you can drop in and work. Back in the workplace, we think things will change dramatically. People working with new technology, but also connecting across distance without jumping on aeroplanes. And the huge growth in video conferencing, again, challenges where we need to work in the city. And what's going on in technology is even more fundamental, because Google and Microsoft and the others are building these huge server farms of the future to deliver cloud-based applications. As The Economist says, computers are evaporating altogether and becoming accessible from anywhere. So the days of offices housing computers and housing servers are over. Software will be delivered as a service to people anywhere in the city. And everyone is jumping on the bandwagon, from obviously Google to Microsoft launching everything on demand around the city. There'll be no need to travel to a building to get your software or your data or process that data. It'll be delivered to you on whatever you choose to carry and wherever you choose to dwell in the city. So a lot is changing in terms of how we'll connect, and therefore the idea of the thin building, I think, is real. The idea that there'll be nothing left in the office building, and even if you go there and the people are there, are they the right people to work with, as the Shell experience told us earlier? Michele talked about transport and the perils of trying to get everyone into the city at the same time each morning. And some work from the University of Michigan has found this is a global phenomenon. You know, most cities, most regions have terrible commuting problems. The UN tells me that there'll be 6 billion city dwellers by 2050 globally, and an average of about 40 minutes each way, which means that in Thailand, in Bangkok, one of the most congested cities, 37 million hours a day are spent commuting. But Michele told me that London's not far off that. 24 million journeys a day here. 37 million hours a day wasted commuting. And that's the reason. We seem to still want to bring people at the same time each day and to leave at the same time each evening into our towns and cities. Commuting peaks and then peaks again. And why is that? Why must we bring people to work at the same time? And of course, this is no longer sustainable. Ricky Burdett was talking that cities now contribute 75% of all carbon emissions globally. So therefore, the city itself is perhaps the biggest problem in terms of a sustainable future. And of course, then finally to buildings, the idea that real estate is expensive, and do people need to put thousands of desks into buildings which are now no longer occupied for most of the working day? A typical study finds that the grey and the green is when that desk is empty, and that's a law firm in the city. Why heat, light, cool a building when it's half empty? So I think the move to digital has a huge potential, and I want to just end with 2 case studies. This is Microsoft in Amsterdam, revolutionizing their building. They took 30% less space. They built a building to accommodate people more like a hotel. When they need to be there, they come in and they work together. But there are no fixed technologies, there's no paper, and there's certainly no desks and offices. It's become a hub, and a hub near an airport. And then this is Macquarie Bank in Sydney, again challenging the nature of how and where work takes place, building a much smaller building that's a place for people to come to when they need to be there, but negating the idea that you commute in and out of a central part of a city day in, day out. This extra 1.1 million people has a big impact, we think, on the way work takes place. I think without radical thinking, the future of work is not great. It becomes a vision like that, which is perhaps not the right vision for London, but I think a polycentric vision where we think about work taking place by both time and location is the right way forward. Thank you.